Hello viewers, Super GT here. Recently I raced at Silverstone in my very first ever car races. Now that weekend not everything went to plan, I did have this crash, but ultimately I finished most of the races and had a really good time. My next adventure was up at Oulton Park, a track which I had never been to before and hadn't really raced much on the sim. I was very kindly invited by the tyre manufacturer GT Radial to drive in their VW Beetle in the Fun Cup, alongside a very familiar name. Okay, teammate, you've probably heard of him. Mr. Jimmy Broadbent.
Hello viewers.
What can I expect today in the Fun Cup?
If you're not having fun, you get black flags. Also, they're quite fragile, these things. They're just sort of shatters.
Gaffer tape sorts everything out. So in qualifying we had a bit of an issue with a collision in the pit lane. Let me get some light. So the car has a bit of damage, which is getting fixed. Should be alright for the race. I was just losing a couple of seconds doing up the seatbelt there. So this is what it looks like inside the car. Quite cosy, can't see too much out of it. So you have flappy paddles, hold this for the radio, hold for the pit limiter. Got the relative information here, so it tells you if you're up or down on your best lap. Jimmy had the honour of drawing the random grid allocation for the race, done on a lottery rather than on a qualifying session, and eventually we were drawn in P3. We are team number 97 out of 19 cars, so it's fairly nice to start towards the front of the pack. In the team is myself, Jimmy Broadbent, and Mr. Ellis Hadley, the resident GT Radial driver, and a big thank you to him and the team for inviting me out to compete in this race. We're going to jump into the rolling start here. 4 hours of racing is about to begin, and Jimmy only takes a couple of seconds here to jump up immediately one position into second on the inside, made the most of it and took P2 straight off the bat. Now, one of the main characteristics of this type of racing, in this type of car, you can race the cars very, very closely indeed, and often that is what happens. The racing forms into very small clusters or packs, and you get what we know as a slipstream train. Now here, going into the final corner, this is about, well, it says a 20-second lap apparently. Jimmy just goes a little bit wide and goes all over the AstroTurf, loses one position, and it's about to be two, as there's going to be a car on the right hand side. Not too much of an issue that really. As long as we don't lose too much time to the leader, that's fine. We can just stay in the pack. So decent job by Jimmy in the first stint. Okay, so Jimmy started the race in third, got up to second briefly. Currently sat in fourth, a few seconds off the lead. I'm about to go out in a few minutes. So Ellis gave me a very quick briefing of things I should look out for when I'm out on the track, and really just how I should attack this stint. And the main thing is really just to try to be consistent for the length of the stint, which is about 40 minutes. Then there was a long wait for Jimmy for his stint to finish, but eventually the call came, and here he is on his final lap, bringing over the car to the right hand side and into the pit lane. Now this is something that I was somewhat nervous about, because in the pit stop driver changes, there's definitely a chance for things to go wrong and you could lose a lot of time very quickly. Now Now eventually we get the car going, no mishaps, we get the car back onto the track, and here you are. Before you know it, you're driving onto the racetrack during a live race, and you've got to switch your head on immediately here. There's no time to warm up. You have to get straight on it straight away, and I have to try and judge the car, judge the conditions as best I can. Bit of an oversteer moment immediately there through the left-hander of turn 2. Then you've got this very long straight here. Let's go for a full lap of the circuit. For those that are not familiar with Oulton Park, it's up in the northwestern corner of the United Kingdom. Very fast sweeping left-hander here, then a big braking zone into this very banked corner at the end of the circuit, the far end of the circuit I should say. We're only about a third of the way through the track. Then you've got a couple of chicanes coming up. You have to try and straighten up this braking zone slightly, as we do here, and then it's really a case of bravery and commitment over the curbs as you then go over the rise into the second of the 2 chicanes. You have a fair amount of time here to think about your braking zone, your braking point, which is roughly where that marker is on the left. I've just gone past it. And then over the curb. I kind of missed it on my first lap here. And unfortunately, you can see the group of cars in front. They're maybe 4 or 5 seconds ahead. That is the leading group, so we have just lost maybe 3 or 4 seconds in the pit stop phase. And the unfortunate thing about that is that you lose the benefit of the slipstream from the cars in front. But what it did do is it helped me just to focus on myself, focus on trying to set faster laps and not worrying about any other cars. So what I really tried to do here is just settle down into a rhythm as we come into the final corner. Big braking zone this one. Turn the car in nice and early. There's not too much grip on these cars. They're fairly slidey. They're quite lively. But I was building up into this stint the best I could. Now eventually we find ourselves up behind some slower cars, so there are 19 cars and it's a 4-hour race, so you do have to sometimes lap some traffic. The cars up in front in terms of position weren't really pulling away too much, which was a positive sign. This was kind of a 98, it's the car that Jimmy overtook at the very beginning of the race, and we get the job done on them without losing too much time. There was another slower car here. And another thing, I was trying to improve my lap time as well, in the mid 203s at this point, up the inside of the back marker, no problem there really. So my fastest timing practice was 2:02.9, but that was in slipstream, which gains you maybe about a second a lap. And here I was doing a 2:03.0 without any slipstream. So my times were getting faster and faster throughout this session, which was the main thing I was really trying to do. I was getting more and more confident with how the car feels. It may well look very simple and easy, but the main thing I was actually having issues with was the downshifting, the slowing down. So you might notice a couple of times throughout the video where I downshift maybe one gear too many and the car slides on the way into the corner, and that was an issue I was having with my driving, and I think it happens here. Let's take a look into this chicane. This was probably my worst sort of sequence of corners on the circuit. I was consistently probably a tenth or two off through that section, more than I should have been, and probably could have committed a lot more to the corners. But as the session went on, I got faster and faster. This is my fastest lap of this session. I'll leave you with the rest of the lap. After about 40 minutes of consistent lapping, I hadn't lost a position, which I was pretty pleased about. But now it was a case of bringing the car into the pit lane. I had the call over the radio that I had to bring it in this lap. So we're going to bring the car over to the right hand side, brake as late as possible to minimise the time loss on the pit entry. And it was really a case of leaving the car in neutral, getting out of the car as quickly as possible and moving the seat back. So quite a lot of things to think about when you get out of the car. Just done my stint and see, look at all these marks on my head. It's quite hard work, but we stayed in 5th. I got quicker and quicker as the stint went on, so we lost the tow from the group in front, but it didn't take very long for Ellis to get it back because we had this full course yellow and a safety car because of an incident somewhere. I think a car was buried in the gravel somewhere. Now, this was an opportunity for pretty much everyone to come into the pit lane and get a cheap and easy pit stop. And it's something that everyone did. Now, take a look at how hectic this pit lane was during this interchange here. So Jimmy rejoined the race in the safety car train. The racing eventually got underway once again. But this is where things would take a turn for the worse, unfortunately. We're well inside the top 10 by this point. We're still in about 5th position. But the pack in front is rather jumbled up because we have back markers in this group as well. And we have a bit of a moment on the exit of turn 2 here, as one of the cars in front spins and slows down, and Jimmy has to take evasive action all over the grass. He did a really good job of keeping that one facing forward. We did unfortunately get some front splitter damage, and it made the car noticeably slower, not by much, but maybe about a second a lap. It was harder to drive from this point onwards, but Jimmy kept in there and did a really solid job for the end of his stint. We're currently in 6th, so my main objective is to stay in 6th. Yeah, get ready to run. I didn't touch it. Yeah, yes, on. And then it was my turn to go out onto the track once again. Now we are into the second half of the race. We're about 2 hours 40 into the race by this point in time. Still in about 5th position, still in 5th position. Rejoining the track, and it was my turn to try to get used to the car. I did notice that, yes, the front end grip wasn't quite where it was before. All I could do is drive the car the best I could, be nice and consistent, and try not to get into too many crashes if possible. That's always a good piece of advice, really, isn't it? This is a lapped car, just trying to find our way through. I'm going to look for a move here into the bank's corner. I'm a bit late on the brakes there, very close to hitting the back of the car in front. Actually get a nice exit and get the move done. And you can't see it at this point here, but there is a car right behind me fighting me for position. So I'm in 5th. 6th place is beckoning right behind me. As we go over the exit curb there of the first chicane, this is where we're going to have a change of position. I didn't want to defend it, because I felt like if the car was quicker, I would let them through, not really fight it too much, and I'll just try and sit in the slipstream. So the Caliente team goes through and takes position, and this is where my race would get a little bit more exciting, because for the first stint I was largely on my own, and this one I now have some company and someone to race directly, and this is where things would get really, really fun indeed. I could see how I was performing against another driver who had a fair amount more experience of the car and presumably the circuit. So I did my best to try to keep up with him. But you see here, I'm pretty sure the car in front was aware that he was trying to break the toe. You see he's swerving from left to right. And pretty much everyone here is aware that you have to stay in the slipstream where possible. And he was just trying to break the toe. Bit of a moment there, as I was mentioning earlier, just getting the car a bit sideways on the entry to the corner. But not the best through that chicane. You see the gap just opening up, and I'm in danger here of losing the slipstream with that car in front. And therefore, I really do need to get this next lap or two correct. And I just made this mistake here. You see there, just drifting a little bit wide. There was a bit of mud on the track, I think. I drifted slightly wide, and this was probably the biggest extent that this gap got to. Maybe, what's that, about a second in front, maybe a bit more. And that's about as big as that gap ever got to the car in front. I took that chicane a lot better and actually got a bit closer there. So that's good. I'm definitely just about in the slipstream range, and therefore I can still work, try to get a little bit closer, and let this car in front do the work for free, and just try to settle down into this stint without losing ground to this. Well, they're a competitor for our position directly. Now, a little bit later on, you see here I've gained a bit more ground, and I felt like, you know what, let's go for a move if possible. My pace was okay, not as good as it was in the first stint, but really largely because of the damage that we had suffered halfway through the race. And of course, you know, the tyres go off as well. I definitely noticed that the tyres weren't as grippy as they were earlier on. And here, coming down towards turn 2, I felt brave, I felt committed, I went for the move, sent it up the inside, and got the job done. So I was really happy with that. Decent pass. So I felt slower in the first half of the stint. I felt better in this sort of latter phase of the stint. Unfortunately, I made this mistake coming into the Banks corner. You see there again, just that issue I was having with the downshifts on corner entry. And unfortunately, it let the Caliente team back through into P5. But it wasn't long before I had another opportunity to get this guy back, because towards the end of the stint we caught up with a couple of back markers, which you can see just in front of the grey car. Well, you can't really see them, we might be able to see them in just a moment. And he kind of dawdles in behind them, and I thought, you know what, okay, you can do that. I'm going to be nice and committed here, throw it up the inside and retake the position. I was actually really happy with that little moment there. So the racecraft was decent, just my pace wasn't as good as it could have been. Having to go defensive here to cover off the position, and then we got another back marker here to try to contend with. So into the slipstream, over the main, through the main straight, on the exit of turn 1, getting a decent run here, and I actually almost clipped the back of this car. Just look how close we get as I just go onto the brakes, very close indeed to contact. That could have ended a lot worse. Thankfully we get through just clean and continue in 5th. Now this was the end of the stint. I got called into the pit lane, so that was the end of my work. I was really happy with how I'd driven, but one last thing to do, bring the car in, get out of it as quickly as possible, and to hand it over to Ellis for the final stint of the race.
Driver order was different. I've done the weight of the car to Jonathan.
Okay, just finished my last stint. Ended it in, where was I? 6th position, I think. Classic Super GT. At the moment, Ellis is out, and he is in a safety car train, so we'll see how this one goes. So I was actually P6, not P5, but you get the idea. This is Ellis on the final stint. You see there's a truck on the circuit recovering a crashed vehicle. Now Ellis was embroiled in a battle with the Caliente team, the team I was fighting in my stint. We unfortunately got overtaken by Team Viking here, lost another position, and then frustratingly this happened. We got overtaken by a back marker, and that put a gap between us and the cars we were trying to overtake. Now meanwhile, a couple of cars got penalties, which was good, so we gained some positions from that. But then we also gained some positions from this incident, where the two cars we're trying to overtake, boom, they crashed into each other, and we gained 2 positions for free. Amazing stuff.
Viking in the barrier. Did Ellis get by though? Did Ellis get by or not? Come on!
P3, come on! We've somehow found our way into third. I'm not sure how this has happened, but at the last second, with literally the last lap, we're now on for a podium, hopefully. Yes, I think so.
Here we go, it's going to be GT Radial.
Yes, boys! Nice one, mate!
Get in. There, Lewis.
GT Radial, that's Jimmy, Ellis and Steve!
Ultimately, it was P3 and a podium on my first ever race at Oulton Park, first ever race in the VW Fun Cup. And it was a really, really fun race, really great experience, really enjoyed the series, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. A massive thank you to Ellis there and to GT Radial for allowing me to race for their team and get some more signatures on my license. It was a really fun day. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I shall catch you next time. Goodbye.